major part of this episode, the murder of your father. Legend has it that, and I'll ask you, did your mother have your father murdered while you are in his arms in a so-called custody dispute over him taking you from the United States to Colombia?
Griselda Blanco, a flamboyant woman nicknamed La Madrina, or Godmother.
A Colombian drug baroness.
A cocaine queen-pin of sorts.
I would characterize her as the epitome of the cocaine cowboys.
Más conocida como la reina de la cocaína.
Griselda Blanco has been charged with 3 murders.
Griselda Blanco.
Griselda Blanco.
For the last 20 years, I've watched other people tell the story of my mother and our family. Now it's my turn to tell the real story.
This is The Real Griselda with Michael Corleone Blanco, author of My Mother, the Godmother, now available at mymotherthegodmother.com.
I love hearing you say that. When you say that, it brings so much, thank you, sir, author.
Dude, I can't even, I know what it's like to write a fucking email. I mean, to write a book is just a ridiculous feat. And I remember you some months ago, you reading me some passages from this thing, and I was like, this is bonkers good. I mean, it was powerful. I expected great storytelling, obviously. I didn't necessarily expect the introspection. Now everybody does, because you're a very thoughtful guy, and they've heard you talking, obviously, over, not only the last several years, but the last several episodes. And the book is just so fucking good. And I told Dan Le Batard when you and I talked to him the other day that as someone who has spent nearly 2 decades now documenting this history with a particular focus, obviously, on your mother and your family, no one is more surprised than I am how many more surprises there are from your story, your mother's story, that we just didn't, the blanks that get filled in.
I would always tell my wife and, other people, I'd be like, one day I would really love for Billy, Alfred, Dave, everybody that was a part of Cowboys to analyze this book and see the holes that are filled in that nobody really knows about.
To me, I mean, one of the incredible revelations of this series, this podcast so far, I mean, has been that the idea that I thought the Papo Mejia War was like a 10, 15-year saga, and it is 3 times
30, 40 years.
That.
30, 40
yeah,
years.
like a multi-generational war that changed, obviously, many families over the course of those 3 decades. You are also repping, of course, Blanco Family
Fincas and Packaging Co.
And this is our
X-Tini.
The X-Tini.
It's a beautiful blend of coffee, martini, and a splash of vanilla. It's delicious. This is my new drink.
But it's dangerously delicious because you could drink this for hours, and then you'd wake up the next day and you'd be like, what country am I in right now? Where am I?
If you ever go to sleep.
Who is this person?
If you happen to be driving and you get messed up and you need a bondsman in the state of California, Ace Deuce will bust you loose.
Good segue. Good PSA. Episode 6 is the final episode of Griselda on Netflix, starring Sofia Vergara. It was going to be our final episode, but your cousin, Junior Blanco, was in the house, and we have a bonus episode, which you do not want to miss.
Amazing. My little cousin, my younger cousin, really supported the family and my mother in her later years.
Episode 6, you can really tell that this show was supposed to be 10 episodes, and they only had 6, because a lot of shit happens.
Yeah, they compressed a lot.
Yeah, in this timeline. A lot of real things happen. This probably, of all the episodes, with the exception of the timeline being a little off, the events, there's more, I think, things that really happened in your life and in your mother's life and in your family that really happened are in episode 6. Rivy did rob a bank for a roll of quarters to use the payphone.
We're only allowed to give change to bank customers, sir.
Jesus, give me a roll of fucking quarters.
But that happened to be in Fort Lauderdale in 85. The Rivy phone sex scandal, spoiler alert, the move to California.
Now that we know, in hindsight, that she left the area back around 1984, clearly the homicide rate went down in that time period.
First thing I want to talk about, because it's a major part of this episode, is your father, Dario Sepulveda, leaving Miami with young Michael Corleone and going to Colombia and the murder of your father. Let's start there.
How did I know you were gonna touch this touchy topic?
I mean, it's in the show. It's in the episode. I'm not sure how accurate it is. We've obviously done it in the Cocaine Cowboys documentaries, and this is something that is of profound interest to me. It's just about how right or wrong all of us have gotten this story.
I believe you guys came somewhat close to it because in the Cowboys, you guys mentioned that I was in the car when he got hit, but he didn't get hit in the car. He got hit outside the car. Every detail of that moment has been engraved in my mind to this day. And I had this conversation with a man of God once, and he told me, since when did you know that God was protecting you? And I guess I told him since the day they killed my father in front of my eyes and I didn't die. My father was un bandido in the whole essence of being a bandit. From head to toe, that man was a bandit. They say Pablo Escobar didn't like to look at him in the eyes. That's the type of bandit he was. When the hit comes and, at the time you're a child and when the bullets were really flying and my father really fell right in front of me after he broke the handcuffs and had to run, it took me a minute to really understand then that this was real.
How old were you?
5 years old, about to turn 6. No, I was not even. I was five in a couple months, I'm not sure. My father was my best friend, just like my mother. He could have kept on running. He could have kept on running. He could have made it to the Catholic school, to the entrance, and he would have lived. But he turned around as I fumbled with his .45 to give it to him, and he was running. He looked at me, and I dropped the gun, and, papi, and he turns around, and he runs back. 27 impacts, not one passed his chest cavity. Because if one bullet would have passed the chest cavity that he held me in, I wouldn't be here to tell the tale.
I'm sorry, that he held you?
Yeah, it's in my book. To this day, I can remember the guns that were used, the cars that came in and screeched their tires. As he turns back and puts me in his chest and turns around to run, that's when I vividly remember the Uzi stuttering, like we say in Medellin, la que gaguea, the one that stutters. That's what we call Uzis, la gaga. Seeing the yellow Volkswagen, seeing the other police there, and seeing them aim at us and shoot. I remember the Lugers, German guns. I remember looking to my side and seeing the other ones aim. And then my father's bodyguard had already aired out the situation and jumped out of the cliff area. They were shooting at him, shooting at me and my father at the same time. My father hugs me. My father, you've seen how big my father was at that time. He was 6 feet something, over 300 pounds. He was a big guy, eating American food every day, living the life. So as he turns, I could feel his body shaking from the impacts of the bullets. And then,
Because he was holding you.
Yeah, he was holding me. And that's why I say, God definitely had a plan for me. Because out of 27, and I have the death certificate, 27 wounds, not one passed his chest cavity where he held me. His bulletproof Bronco that he had done his homemade bulletproofing with, big sheets of metal in the walls of the doors. We were leaving in that originally to go to the dentist in El Pueblo, in the town, and we catch a flat exiting La Finca. But they had already, they were either going to come get us in La Finca or they were looking for the best time to get us. Because from what I understand, they had already done their homework and found us at a mall. And the person that was paid to be the person that observed us, he was told it's the same guy, Rubén Darío, big, And you'll always see his son with him that dresses like him and has a briefcase just like him. And that day that we went to the mall, I was dressed just like my father, his business briefcase, my business briefcase, and he was going to, I guess, do some collections in the businesses that he had in Bogota. Supposedly, that's how they were able to tail us to the ranch.
And they were dressed as police officers?
They were police officers.
They were police officers.
Some were bandits, and the other ones were actually lieutenants, high-ranking police officers that were paid off.
¿Dónde está Michael?
Está bien. Está conmigo.
Legend has it, and the motive is the same in the Netflix series, even though, of course, the circumstances are very different from what you described, the real-life situation, that, and I'll ask you, did your mother have your father murdered in a so-called custody dispute over him taking you from the United States to Colombia?
All facts point to that it was her. My mother never acknowledged that to me. Not once. Other people have. I mean, I know Rivi has documented it and said that he was actually there. My brother told me once in one of those late night conversations while we were under the influence, just talking as one man to another and one brother to another, and as much as he wanted to hide it to me, he plain out told me that, yeah, Mama did that, and what would you do if somebody kidnapped your kid? I'm not saying that she was right, he said, but yeah. So it's something that I've struggled with my whole life, because how can you hate the woman that, breastfed you, but how can you love the woman that had your father assassinated? So it's a very touchy subject, and I'd rather not go even further into it.
To take a step back then, do you know what the dispute was between them, why he left her?
Their relationship had broken up. He was already dating a beautiful American woman with green eyes. They had moved in Sunny Isles together. My father was a very good-looking man, better looking than me, and that's hard. But he was a very good-looking man, and he was able to have multiple families at the same time. I met my half-sister at the age of 22, believe it or not. And my mother gave us a house to live in, believe it or not, with the same stepdaughter that she never met. You get it? And the crazy thing is that she's only 2 years younger than me, which means that she was conceived in Miami. And the pictures that she shows me about their childhood house was one of our stash houses that we lived in for months. I remember the canal, an alligator came in and was in the pool one day. And I saw the alligator, and then I see pictures afterwards of the same pool, same house, with these two other kids I've never met in my life. And then lo and behold, they turned out to be my half-sister and half-brother.
Episode 6. A lot of shit goes down. They do this kind of portrayed as this kind of hasty move to California, as we already talked about. That was kind of long in the works, a lot of back and forth. Your brothers were already well established by the time your mother was arrested there in 1985.
Yes.
What do you remember about California?
Oh, man. Jimmy, wait till you read this book, because everything that you left out in Cocaine Cowboys 1, 2, and Reloaded about the arrests of the Trujillo Blanco brothers and my mother's arrests, I really get into it. I detail it day per day.
I want to talk about this because what happens in a pretty short period of time, your father is murdered, not just in front of you, but while you are in his arms.
Yeah, my father died in the ambulance, in my arms. And then later on, when the ambulance picks us up, he flatlines in the ambulance.
Your mother is arrested.
1985.
Your brothers are arrested. This all happens in a matter of a few short years when you are between the ages of what? 5 and 8 or 9?
5 and 7.
5 and 7.
Yes.
So let's start with the arrest of your mother. Where were you? How did you find out? What was your reaction? How did your brothers react?
We were in Orange County in L.A. by Anaheim. We had lived in this beautiful home. My brothers had another home close by that we were living in before. It was a architect, like it was a Asian architect, and my brother Uwit had the whole house with this Asian architecture, and it was beautiful. And then my mother had her own house. And the night before, we meet up with Uwit and Dixon so they can give her, her percentage. And they peeped the whole situation. They realized we were hot, but my brothers didn't really understand. They knew they were hot, but they were so cowboyish that they're like, fuck it. They're on us, so what? We're still going to get away with it. But you should leave, Mama. And my mother, and her downfall was that she didn't want to run anymore with her son. And I remember, like if it was yesterday, she's telling my brother Uwid, I don't think it's for me. I think you guys are hot. And I don't think it's me.
Oh.
And
they're
like,
coming for her.
Yeah. And then
I guess that kind of makes sense, though, at the time, no, in California.
She says, who the hell knows I'm here? Nobody does. She goes, I think you guys are hot because of all your little fucking friends. And it turned out to be true. That's what had heated her up. So somebody that was from Uber's clan that knew us from Medellin.
Right, kind of pushed the spotlight onto her. And Palumbo, who had chased her from New York to Miami, little did she know was in California for her.
Yeah. We end up somehow making it back to our hideout, me and my mother's, and their my brother's grandmother was living with us. She always lived with us. My mother took her in, her ex-mother-in-law. She was a short lady. She thought it was my brother's heat. She calls Cheeky. Cheeky says, if I were you, I'd get on the plane, hit it back to Colombia right now. She said she had already told my other brothers, I'm not going to run with this kid anymore. He has to go to a regular school. I'm not going to run with this kid and keep on giving him the fucking life we've lived for the last 10 years. If they're going to come get me, they're going to come get me. But that kid deserves to be normal and go to school.
And what happened?
Next day, they came and got us.
I went upstairs and found her sitting in bed reading the Bible. And I just walked up to her, obviously had my weapon drawn. I said, Hola, Griselda. ¿Qué pasó? And she said, no, Griselda, me llamo Betty. I said, no. And then I gave her a little kiss on the cheek, as I promised I would to the agents many, many months earlier.
Michael made a quick change, in case people didn't notice. I love that jacket, by the way. Uncle Luke will love that jacket, too.
University of Miami color. Shout out to my family, Cookies SF. Thank you. They keep me fresh.
Can I see the shirt? What do you got?
Oh, the shirt is Junior's company.
Love
Hippie Hill, San Francisco.
Junior Blanco will be joining us for a bonus episode, The Real Griselda Epilogue. We are talking about episode 6 of Griselda on Netflix. We were just talking about your mother getting arrested. What happens to little Michael? What happens to you when your mom gets picked up?
It's a story that you guys didn't document because, I didn't tell you guys anything. But, yeah, I end up in an orphanage for a couple months by myself. The whole family's incarcerated, 3 to 4 months in the biggest orphanage in L.A. County.
Did your brothers get picked up at the same time, too?
No, but if they were to go pick me up, they would have got picked up.
Right.
I guess they already had the indictment, and they were still...
So they were lying low.
You could say that, but Cheeky had one of the biggest mansions in Beverly Hills. They were still hanging out with all the pop stars. Dixon migrates from the north to the south, Porsches and Lamborghinis. Same lifestyle, but in California.
And their baby brother's in an orphanage.
An orphanage for a couple months. And then I get picked up by a certain lady that is another narco queen pin, and she picks me up on the orders of my mother so I can be with my mother in New York City while she's in the federal building in New York, facing trial for her charges in New York City, Operation Banshee and everything else.
This is an indictment from 74, 75. That's the thing, is that like when your mom gets picked up, that's a 10-year-old indictment. In the meantime, she had been operating that entire period.
Mm-hmm. Como Pedro por su casa, like we say, like Peter in his house.
Yeah, it must be, was it funny to her that she's on trial for 150 kilos from 1974 or 75, considering what she had been up to the last decade after that?
Like I told you, my mother's dark humor, I think it was very funny to her. I think the cat and mouse game that she played for decades with the authorities and with enemies, you know, it's like, yeah, catch me if you can. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio becomes this game. And then when it stops being a game, reality strikes again. And, yeah. And even when she was incarcerated in New York, I guess in our minds, she was still going to beat that right away, you know?
Where you and your brothers get
I was with them.
arrested?
Speak about it in the
Really?
book. Yeah, I was with them.
So you're not...
Except Cheeky. Cheeky gets arrested the night before Uber and Dixon.
How do you get back west with your brothers, and what happens when they get busted?
It comes to the point that me living with different legal guardians and everything, you know, I want to be around my brothers. Like, a lot of people don't understand how united we were, you know, and I was the little prince of the family. So make it back to the West Coast through that person and end up living in Crescent Heights, Los Angeles, and then spent the next 5 to 6 years in LA. And they kind of have to do with the arrest of my brothers. I guess my brothers got arrested because they were visiting me.
Really?
Yeah. My brothers get arrested, and then I end up just staying in LA with the legal guardians that I was with.
So basically, in a couple days, not long after your mom was arrested.
No, it was almost a whole year after, a couple months after.
I mean, that's pretty close, though. I mean, you lost your father.
In a kid's
You've
eyes.
lost your mother. And now all three of your brothers,
Yeah.
in a matter of a couple days, are locked up.
Yep.
Where are you?
Like I said, I was bouncing from these two households, and then one of the households ended up just, all right, we'll be your legal guardians, and your mother's okay, no matter what happened. And I wrote about it in my book so much about what happened, what transpired, and how it was crazy. I ended up with this family and spend the next 5 to 6 years, almost 7 years with them, and they became my family. And it really makes you understand how, for example, kids that get lost in the system and they become state babies, you know, orphanage from orphanage and going to different homes. And it really made me open up and understand how other parents could raise other kids and the love they have to have for those kids. And yeah, I can't complain. They were a great family. It's in my book, but it wasn't easy. Think about it. I came from a luxurious lifestyle, having everything I wanted, to buying shoes at Payless shoe stores, living somewhat of a, you know, I don't want to say poor life, but not luxurious anymore.
Things they do get right in the series. She is busted, 85, in California. They start to have some fun fudging the facts there because she is in Mariana when Metro-Dade, when Centac goes to pick her up.
Yes.
Miss Blanco, I'm Detective Hawkins. This is Detective Singleton.
Let's get you back to Miami, shall we? I know you miss it.
And the story goes that they were driving in this caravan, which was this very, like, carefully coordinated, like, we're going to, like, this is where we're going to go, this is where we're going to stop for fuel or for, you know, potty breaks or whatever, and, like, we're going to make a beeline for South Florida from the Panhandle. And then all of a sudden, the car with your mother in it pulls over to the side of the road, and a bunch of the officers get out, and they're, like, kind of throwing their arms. First they're panicking. They're like, why are we deviating from the plan and from the course here? And the officers get out, and they're, like, having a fit on the side of the road. And apparently what had happened is that your mother had asked, like, where are we going? What exactly is happening? And it became clear to her that she was going to Dade County to face 3 capital murder charges.
Facing the electric chair.
September of 94, we finally get the arrest warrant for Griselda.
The indictment was filed in Miami.
This new secret indictment consisted of 3 counts of first-degree murder, which, if successfully argued in a court of law, would more than likely land the godmother on Florida's death row.
And that Rivy, of course, she knew that he was cooperating, but that he made that case against her, and apparently she threw up in the back of the car and on some of the, I guess, the officers that were riding with her, and that's what deviated from that course. I guess just when you think that her time is coming to an end.
I was with her when we found out that Ribby had turned state on her. I was visiting her, and Charles tells her right in front of me.
This is Dublin.
Yeah, Dublin.
And Charles Cosby is with you.
Yes.
And he delivered the news.
Yes.
When she came into the multipurpose room, she had a look like I had never seen. She wore no makeup that day. That's the first time I ever saw her without makeup. Disheveled, going through a wide range of emotions.
He had delivered the news to me in the car, and I was like, I don't want to tell her that. Because I kind of didn't believe it or didn't understand it. And even at that age, was already 15, I was like, does this mean she'll never see daylight again? So I didn't want to believe that Rivy was really doing that. She didn't believe it.
The godmother, she fucking could not believe it. She said, get the fuck out of here. She said, I fucking don't believe you.
She was in a state of shock. I remember her telling me repeatedly, it's over. And me telling her, Mom, no, we're going to beat this too. We got lawyer money. We're good. Look at the lawyers you have. And she says, oh, Maikito, Rivy sabe todo lo mío. Rivy knows everything about me. So she was in a state of shock. And it kind of broke her heart too. You know, she said, no lo creo. That's not true. It won't happen. But
meaning Rivy wouldn't cooperate.
Yeah, she was like, not Rivy, never.
Rivy would never turn on me. I don't believe it. Her and Rivy, they had lived in the trenches together, so to speak. You know, they had went through wars together. You know, this is a person she trusted with her life as well as her secrets. She loved Rivy as if he were her own son.
I mean, I guess he had probably no choice in the matter, but it's always sad to see a guy testifying against his friends.
On a lighter note.
Yes, sir.
Who is
On a lighter note.
Who is Charles Cosby?
Who?
Charles Cosby is a drug trafficker from Oakland, California.
I was just a street dealer, which wasn't bad money, but of course it was no Griselda Blanco status. I was basically looking to upgrade my status, and the godmother was the passport to upgrading my status to an entirely different level as far as criminal entrepreneurship.
And what Griselda, before she got transferred to Mariana, was doing her federal time in this facility near Oakland. He struck up a pen pal relationship with her because of who she was. She was like his hero, and then he became her lover.
How do you meet Charles Cosby out west?
She called me one morning, you know, Charles, I think it's time that you meet my son, Michael Corleone, the love of my life. You know, he was about 12 years old at the time. I rang his doorbell, and he came to the door wearing a wife beater. He was a little bitty guy. He looked so much like his mother. For his age, he was very mature. He had the maturity level of maybe a 18 or 20-year-old. From the first time we met, I was like his surrogate father. Michael Corleone had a fascination about Oakland. So I would go get Michael Corleone and bring him to Oakland. He would spend nights with me, and the godmother definitely appreciated me spending so much quality time with Michael Corleone.
You know, I think I'd be less of a man not to acknowledge that Charles was there at one point in my life, and he did good by me at one point in my life. So it'd be wrong for me not to acknowledge that as a young man growing up.
How are you?
Oh, man, I'm doing too good, man.
Yeah.
How's Michael doing?
Michael is in Colombia now.
I got something to give you a Michael, too.
You look for different father figures. I wouldn't say he was a father figure. I would say he was an opportunist and a person that was clear what his intentions were.
I said, well, the offer of cocaine that you made some months back, does that offer still stand, godmother? She said, yes, why, of course it does. How much cocaine would it take to put you in business to live a comfortable life? I said, well, let me see what I can do with 50 kilograms first. And if that goes the way I want it to go, or the way I'm anticipating it to go, you know, maybe you give me another 100 kilograms in another month or two.
At the same time, you know, probably an intelligent man at that moment because he knew what he was doing.
I knew if I could get a kilogram connection, I could move him. There was so many dealers moving ounces of cocaine, so it was a lot of money on the street. But there was no big drug dealer in the city at that time, so I knew if I could get a large connection, I would be the man.
So while we're on the subject, I'll talk about something that I've been promising we would talk about this whole series. The Cocaine Cowboys documentaries.
Yes.
Where did we go wrong?
check out Cali Gold Custom.
Ace Deuce will bust you loose.